for a job, you are somebody who can provide jobs, or you are everybody in between, which is somebody who is a conduit and a connection to everybody else. And that is a role that as Christian brothers and sisters we get to play for one another all the time. I'm going to share a bunch of stories with you tonight. I'm going to tell you a bunch of crazy stuff. Along the path, my prayer and my prayer to the Holy Spirit on my way here is that there's something tonight that you hear that either challenges you or causes you to go into tomorrow differently. I'm very clear though, I don't need you to gain from every single thing I say. I'm just looking for that one thing. So let's start. I went to Texas A&M. I was the youngest of 4 children to go through Texas A&M, home of the 12th man. All my brothers and sisters had graduated, and I started there, and my parents somehow paid for 48 semesters of college that were all overlapping in one way or another. So they were parents of the decade, I believe. Except for, they didn't know what they had in store when I came. I was the wild one. I was the one who wanted to test the limits, and that I somehow thought I was invincible. Anyways, I graduated from college and went off to work for Frito-Lay. So my parents were really proud, right? I go work for this Fortune 500 company. And I always laugh, my business card, remember I'm 23 years old and I'm single, my business card said I was a corn resource. And to this day, I'm not quite sure what that means. I think Frito-Lay is an incredible company, but I don't know that corn resource was a fitting title for me. And so I had a 1-week vacation during my first year. I flew up to New York to visit some friends from college. And as you know, when you get to New York, you get to go check out some shows, and people were telling me different things to go and see. And so we lined up our week, but the final show we would go see was the play Midsummer Night's Dream, but it was told entirely through disco music, a Midsummer Night's Disco, if you will. And if you've ever been to an off-Broadway show, they end up being very interactive. It's not like you sit in your seat. You're part of the show, and the characters mess with you. So here's a picture from that show. And we went and had a great night. Well, I got pulled up onto one of these stages during the pre-show, and one of the characters was messing around, and I unsnapped my pearl snap shirt and danced around, and then the show went on, and an hour and a half later I was blown away, and it turned into an all-night disco party. So there I'm with my friend dancing, and a woman comes up, and she said, "I'm the general manager of this show. Here's the stage manager. We saw you up on that stage. Would you ever consider auditioning for this show?" And I told them that I was very busy back in Texas being a corn resource. But in all honesty, the internet was fairly new and email wasn't something you did all day, every day. So we exchanged emails and said, let's stay in touch. And I didn't tell anybody back home that this had happened. So I flew back to Texas. We emailed each other over several months. And then I called in sick to work one day because I was in New York City and didn't tell my parents. And I went to an audition. And they had auditioned 300 people for this part earlier in the day, and I got a private audition that night. It was just me, and then I got to be in the first part of the pre-show before the choreographed part starts. I slipped away when the show started. They said, "Hey, you got the part. When can you start in the show?" And I said, "I got to quit my job, sell my car, tell my parents I'm even in New York, so give me 2 weeks." I flew home and made a phone call to my parents. And actually, this was the phone I had. Did anybody remember this phone from the 90s, like the see-through phone? Well, I remember vividly because I called and I did the thing where my mom answered and I said, "Hey, I have something to tell you, but could you get Dad on the phone so I can tell you both at the same time?" And I could feel the air let out of the room. They both got on and I said, "Mom, Dad, I've been in New York City for a couple days and I quit my job at Frito-Lay and I'm moving to New York to be a disco fairy." They didn't laugh. You could laugh. They didn't laugh. They didn't think it was very funny. I did it. Quit my job and I moved to New York and I danced in a show that ran for 8 years. I was in it for the better part of a year. I was surrounded by celebrities. I was in parades. I got to dance with Brooke Shields, for crying out loud. It was a pretty special year. And it wasn't for me in the long run, and there's some good reasons why I left. It was an incredible experience. But I joke about, no, it's not. I did it on purpose.
Okay.
Thank you, though. You're all over this. My slide is black on purpose. You're supposed to feel the darkness.
So it's actually...
Do you feel it? I didn't realize what you were doing.
No, it's been tricky before, so...
So, I'll bring it back. So, I moved to New York, and this is me dancing. I as a disco fairy on a stage in New York City. The show actually then went off to Boston, ran for 20 years total, the most successful off-Broadways. And get this, it's called The Donkey Show. I think that's the craziest name in the world, so if you ever type it in, you better write in New York City and Broadway and all sorts of stuff. Don't just Google The Donkey Show. But it makes me reflect on another time that I had to make a call to my parents, and when my mom answered, I told her to get my dad on the phone because I had some news for them. Except for this time it wasn't funny. It was that I had been arrested. I was a sophomore at Texas A&M. I got pulled over on my way to talk to the band late in the night. And when the police officer asked me why I was speeding or if anything was wrong, I said, "Yes, sir, I'm intoxicated and you need to take me to jail." And it was because I knew at that moment that I was actually being given a gift, because this wasn't the first time that I was guilty of the crime. It wasn't even one of these situations where I was going to pretend like something else was going on. I was in that moment and in that jail cell so thankful that in my stupidity, I hadn't been hurt or worse, hurt or killed somebody else. So that night, looking at myself in a reflection of a paper towel dispenser in the Bryan College Station jail, I vowed to change my life, even in my drunkenness. And it was really tough because, of course, the next morning when I called my parents, I told them that I had been in jail. You can imagine having their youngest kid be the only one to ever experience this. I was a very big disappointment. But I went through a pretty amazing string of events that included pleading guilty as soon as I could, because I was guilty and I wanted to start the next chapter of my life. 11 months after I pled guilty, I went to a Mothers Against Drunk Driving Victim Impact Panel. And while I was sitting there in a room in a gymnasium listening to a mother speak about the death of her daughter, I got arrested on September 23rd, 97. So this was November 11th of 1998. I remember the seat, the time, the air, the room, the person, because I had an epiphany moment as a picture got passed to me of her daughter who had been killed on the side of the road after a flat tire by a drunk driver. And looking at this picture, I had a moment that God let me see the future and told me that I was supposed to go and put my full effort and all of my networking and connections and skills to use so that other good kids wouldn't make stupid mistakes. Because I couldn't tell the difference between that girl and my friends, and I couldn't tell the difference between the guy who killed her and my story, other than I hadn't been in an accident, so God gave me another chance. What was phenomenal is that I then dedicated the rest of my college days to launching this program, which was incredibly difficult. And if you ever want to have some good stories, I'll tell you about the time that I had to go one 20-year-old against 9 lawyers who ran the Texas A&M risk management system and out-chess matched them in a business competition where they couldn't come up with a single hole in the plan that we had put together. Or the times that I was told by the director of the University Police Department that I had no idea what I was doing. The guy had a patch, he's ex-FBI, one of the scariest men I've ever met. 2 years later, he's telling everybody that we were able to start this program under his watch. So it took a year, but what I ended up launching with the help of many friends in the community was a program called CARPOOL. It's an acronym that's Caring Aggies Are Protecting Over Our Lives. It launched in September of 1999. That very first weekend, I had already studied all the programs in the U.S. This program, built on a completely unique framework that made sense, that was logical from a business perspective, that caused the students who were driving other people home every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night to feel this intrinsic value of doing life-saving work, but also to be a part of a business culture where they got to be involved in something that was bigger than them, where they were recognized and rewarded, they were knocking down the door to get in, where our corporate sponsors were getting the recognition they deserved, where even the patrons got in and didn't feel judged because it wasn't about a choice that they made that night, it was about a choice they made to get home safely. And you heard the statistic that CARPOOL to this day is now 22 years old. It took about a year off for COVID. It's just now relaunched in the last month and has given over 290,000 people a ride back to their home, not to another bar, club, or party. And the model for CARPOOL has been franchised to dozens of schools throughout the U.S., mostly schools that are in college towns. And it's hugely successful. The learnings I got from CARPOOL and from all my other work allowed me to get into the energy industry. And 9.5 years ago, my partners and I started a company called Five. We do energy consulting of all sorts, a comprehensive energy plan from procurement to resiliency and backup power and sustainability across the entire United States and Mexico, with employees from Mexico City to New York City. We've won a ridiculous amount of awards both for culture and growth and innovation, along with the awards that CARPOOL and myself has won for the volunteer service that I've done. But why would I share all of this with you? That's a whole lot of stories that I threw at you. And I got two really strong reasons for it in this room. One is, if there's a nugget that you get today, that you get to share with somebody afterwards, you can tell them that you heard about it from a disco fairy. It's pretty special, right? People are going to think you're crazy. My other reason is, this journey I've been on in business, in the failures, in the times that I've been pulled back up by the grace of God, has allowed me to evangelize through business, through helping other people to find who they're supposed to be in their business careers, through personal coaching. And so tonight I want to share with you some of the ways in which my life has been impacted, or that I've seen other people apply some of the most basic principles of who we are as Catholics, as Christian men and women that are coming into the business world and what we're called to be in business. So first, I just want to challenge you with this question: why do you exist? And maybe I'll back up and say, why does a business exist? And it's pretty easy to get into a lot of debates. It's pretty easy to throw some nice words up on the wall. But at the end of the day, businesses don't exist to make money. Businesses shouldn't exist just for shareholder value, in my mind. I think that is a very short-term view and some short-term words. Businesses should exist to create some good or solve some problem or to help in some way. And they should be acutely aware of profits and the need to grow and the need to be prudent with their money. But it's really easy to take that exact same concept and put it into my body. Did God put my body on earth to pump blood and to breathe oxygen? The answer is no, but I absolutely have to pump blood and breathe oxygen. I was put on this earth to A, glorify God, B, to follow the vocation of marriage, and C, to help carve a path for my 5 beautiful children so that they know God and have a path to heaven. I also happen to run a really successful energy advisory company and have a lot of other nonprofits and things that I'm connected to. Want to hear a funny story? This church and this school are actually one of my clients because we serve the entire Diocese of Dallas. So here we are. This is somehow connected back to what I actually do. But those are just details. It's not my why. And so I always want to challenge people, especially when they start to feel like they're in this rut. Maybe you were looking for a job before COVID hit, and so it's just piling on. Maybe something about COVID caused your industry or your job to change. Maybe in COVID you realized that you're not in the right job and you should be changing. Or maybe COVID caused you to realize that you're so job focused that you're forgetting to turn around and reach out and help others, even if you're somebody without a job, that we have an opportunity to connect and to help others. And what's phenomenal, I'm going to give you a reading assignment here. If you were to read one of these 2 pieces up here, one is a book called The Pope and the CEO, and I just love it. But the one on your left, what happened to it? Has that been on for a while? You've missed a lot of stuff. It really did go off. Guys, it was dark earlier on purpose. How long? You missed a bunch of really great pictures. Did you see me dancing? It was really good. I can do it with that nice.
Well,
It was really powerful. Let me just tell you about it. What'd you do when you went in the back? Did you press something special? I'm gonna press one more thing. Hold on, let's see. Really? What'd you do?
She fixed it.
Oh my goodness, what did we miss? So many beautiful, vivid images. Yeah, we'll just start here. All right. So I talked about why I exist. I should know that. That bright light should indicate to me this thing is on behind me. It's a context clue. Am I making a big shadow? I'm gonna move over here for you. All right. Is your camera still good? Technical difficulties here. I'm going to give you some assigned reading. Now you can see that there's books up here actually. The one on your right is called The Pope and the CEO. But on the left is a PDF that you can download. It's from the Pontifical Council for Freedom and Justice. I'm probably butchering that. But it's called The Vocation of the Business Leader. And what it helps you to do is to contextualize that the social teachings of the Catholic Church are applied in every part of our business. Whether you're a leader, you're a new employee, you all have the ability to influence your surroundings and to evangelize through your faith in the workplace. And that comes through the basic tenets of dignity of all humans. It comes through the tenets of stewardship and solidarity. And even in our struggles, we're still called to reach out to others that are in need. It goes through these concepts that we get to hear about in New Wave books of extreme ownership. You think of this concept that the more responsibility that I give to others, that I entrust with others without watching over their back or micromanaging them, that work is a formative process. Work allows us to grow into being who we are called to be and to being the best version of ourselves and to co-create with God. That we were not made for work. Work was made for man, and it is a gift to us that we're able to work. So even when we're not working for income, working for the greater good of somebody else or something else is a place that we can be fulfilled in being what we're called to be for God. And it's the opposite, obviously, of the sloth, the resentment that comes when we sometimes look too inward and don't look outward. So look at Vocation of the Business Leader. Then when you're done with that, read The Pope and the CEO, two of the great guidebooks of the cultures that I've been a part of. My second thing that I want to talk about, and I think that this is going to apply in all of your relationships, and it will play out for a job seeker, okay? It's this concept that when I think about how powerful words are, words and the delivery of them are like a great crane. You can be building and constructing, or you can put a big cement block on the end of it and tear anything down. And what's phenomenal to me is how many people are unaware of the impact of the words that they've chosen to use. So I think about this spectrum of intentionality. A lot of times if I'm watching people who are upset or don't realize that they've upset somebody, they'll say, I wasn't trying to hurt their feelings. You know, in an email communication and a text communication, I wasn't trying to hurt your feelings. And I believe that to be true. Very few of us have malicious intent. But the spectrum goes from trying to hurt your feelings to trying to build you up. So not trying to hurt your feelings is just, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, it's just a neutral stance. I believe in our emails, in our words, in our word choices, and even in reading the relationships that we're in, we should be very intentional about getting to the place where we're trying to build people up and even trying to build ourselves up. I'll give you one to start off with. Your internal dialogue is part of your words. So if everything that you do is something you have to do, then everything that you're doing has now become a burden. I have to go listen to this guy Jeff speak tonight. He probably didn't say that one. This is a joy. But what about the ones that I say? I have to get up at 2 in the morning because the baby's crying and I need to go get him and bring him to my wife. I have to deal with a really tough people issue and even face a termination for one of my employees. Every time I say that, I'm actually taking away the gift that God's given me, that I get to wake up. I get to be the person who woke up in the middle of the night and took care of a baby as his father and be present to that kid. Not that I have to. What a blessing for him, for me, for my wife. I get to be the person who has a really tough conversation at work tomorrow with an employee who's made a few mistakes and needs coaching and love and motivation. I get to be the person, because terminations are going to happen. I will tell you, I do get to be the person who does the vast majority of terminations in every company I've been in, and it's because the people around me recognize that I enter it prayerfully. I give the person the utmost amount of dignity. I'm certainly trying to focus on the momentum they need and to stick to the points that are most relevant. And people aren't very happy in the moment very often, but I can tell you this will never end up on our website. How many people send me letters and texts and hugs after they've been let go because of the way in which it happened and the motivation and momentum that they had going forward. And all this comes down to words. So let's talk a little bit more about this now that my images are working. There's this language of coaching. And I don't want to get too deep into this, but I want to give you some pointers, because every one of you is trying to communicate, whether it's email, phone, Zoom, or now you're finally in person or outdoors, or you're masked or you're unmasked, and probably even harder now that we're masked because we lose so much. I don't even know if any of you are smiling at me. We're losing so much of our communication because of the situations that we're in. I think in work settings, I also think in personal settings, what I'm going to say works. If I walk into one of my business partners and I say, what was that in there? You totally threw off this, and this, and I'm so upset, and my partner's in the middle of sending an email to somebody, and he looks at me, he doesn't even know what conversation I was having in my head before I walked in the door. He's most likely going to be on the defensive. Or, hey, I don't like that we blah, blah, blah. And somebody's talking about an email they read that maybe was written 2 days ago, and they never set the table for me of what we're about to cover. Or I didn't do it to them, I caught somebody off guard. There are such easy tools. This is not going to be hard. It's just a little bit of a muscle memory switch. If you're going to be talking about tough things, or even you're going to be going into conversations about where you want to be in your career with somebody, make sure that they're on the same playing field as you. Set the table and say, hey, when you get a minute, I would like to get some feedback from you about the situation that we just had. Hey, when you get a minute, I'd love to offer a little bit of coaching and maybe get your feedback as well. Tell me when you have some free time. It's not an emergency, but I'd like to do it today. Do you know what happens when you engage somebody like that? You can do this in your house too. People usually will set down whatever they're working on or looking at or writing, or ask you for 1 more minute so they can finish up this thing in front of them. And they'll turn and they will physically change their countenance and their presence to you. And now you can engage in real conversation with somebody. There's a time and a place that you can just let things roll off your tongue and keep going. But when anything has gravity, it should also be given the proper table setting so that both parties are meeting each other where they're at. And I love these phrases. When you get a moment, can I offer some coaching and also get your feedback as well? I would like to get some coaching from you. I could tell that when I said something earlier, it didn't go well. Can we talk through it whenever you have some free time? It's actually incumbent upon us to be open and honest about those things. I'll go quickly in this one. I just love the language of accountability. And if I'm thinking about anyone who is in a job-seeking position, and I get introduced to somebody probably every 2 days, I don't always expect them to know what they want or what they're looking for. But there is some clarity that comes from people saying, okay, thank you for this, Jeff. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this, this, and this. I'll have it done by this point, and here's how you'll know when I'm finished. It's a who's going to do what by when. And it's so clear it's not ASAP or in the next week. It's by close of business next Tuesday, I will have looked through your connections on LinkedIn and sent you the 7 that sounded interesting to me to see which 3 you have relationships that are strong enough to make an introduction for me. If you say that to me and you do it, now I feel great about what I'm going to do next. I may even go stretch past to some of the connections that are not as strong and really go out of my way to make those happen. But if somebody says, could you look through your LinkedIn and get back to me? Probably not, because you just put the homework on me, first of all. And second, where's the accountability? There's such grace and such charity when somebody can own their responsibility and say, hey, it's Tuesday morning, Jeff, something's come up. I know I'm not going to get this to you today. Can I reset expectations on when we're going to have this? Would that work for you? And now we don't have the upset because we don't have any undelivered communication or any unmet expectations. Here's another one. It's not hard to pick up when somebody's gossipy. It's not hard to realize when yourself is gossipy. What is hard is if you have gossipy relationships and gossipy circles, and I'm guilty of this in my career, they're hard to break. So I'm thinking about how strong and powerful words are in a minute. I'm going to give you some tools. I love having to retrain the muscle by recognizing when you're starting to get into that gossipy circle thing that you would never say in front of the person, and you can back up and say, you know what, I've made a commitment to stop gossiping. This isn't a conversation I want to be a part of. And it's not a judgmental statement. It's a timeout, I might walk away statement. And it's awkward at first. But I retrained and retooled some groups that we were a part of at my old company, a big power company 10 years ago. And at first it was awkward, and then it became the norm. And then it became that people would say, yeah, I don't want to gossip either. I actually want to talk about happy things and things that I'm excited about and things that are joyful in my life. I love this image because what I'm about to describe is perfectly encapsulated in this image. So many times we deliver language that is either defeating or debilitating or threatening without realizing it, when we could just flip it ever so slightly and completely change the context. And so when this image changes and you see that there's really people below this person to catch them, I think about my favorite one at work. And it was that we realized by cataloging how we felt that every time somebody said, I don't care, it hurt. If somebody said, Jeff, I did all this research, here's some options, but here's why I don't think we're going to do option B, and I was just in a hurry, and I said, listen, I don't care. Go do whatever you're going to do. I've now taken away the validity of the effort of that person. But instead of saying I don't care because I'm busy, or saying I don't care because I I think that between the options, they all sound the same to me. I can flip it with the same number of words and syllables and say, I trust you. So, you know what, you're thinking about option B, you're thinking about this, time out. I have to run to a meeting, I trust you, you got this, and I will be right there with you. If it doesn't go the way you expect it to, let me know, let's talk about that too, that'll be something to celebrate. And hopefully if you're not in this room with your spouse, you can use this at home too, because saying I don't care hurts, saying I trust you is uplifting. But if your spouse is in the room, then they know the secret, and when you say, I trust you, they think you mean I don't care. So you gotta really be careful. Who knows your secrets? But it's funny because those 3 words changed my company's culture for the better. We also, and this goes back to muscle memory, how do you overcome this? Can you imagine an interview if I hear you say that everybody always does something and nobody ever does something else, and you've never had this and it's always this? Extreme language is, the time I'll use extreme language is when I'll say it's always wrong. You could say, often I've run into situations that are like this. And I rarely have had times where a boss has communicated with me like this, but if you say always and never, I'm going to start to believe that you're a victim and that you're used to painting people into corners that they can't get out of. Because we don't live in extremes outside of our brain. Our brain probably is extremes, but that internal dialogue is the devil. So get rid of that dialogue and get in the present and train yourself to stop using that extreme language. If we had more time, one of the things I do a lot in culture sessions is work with people to write down what are the things that somebody says to them or they probably believe that they say over email or in person that can really tear down a conversation in a person. I had one the other day where a CEO heard that his head of legal for a really great pro-life nonprofit, he said the head of legal said, I don't like it when somebody writes in all caps, ASAP, because it gets under my skin that somebody doesn't have the dignity to go through and talk about what their real timeline is. And the CEO just looked at him and put his head down and he's like, I will stop. I didn't realize what I was doing, but I see it now. And all of us have these things that are not about the intent of the person, they're about the way it lands with us as recipients. So that's all about words matter. The next section is about self-care, and there's all different levels of this. I always love the sit and be fit or the 1980s jazzercise. I do think it's really important if you are a job seeker, if you're growing in your career, and if you are trying to use your best self to help other people, that you take care of yourself. But it all actually starts here. Prayer is real. Being in the sacraments is real. And I read a quote the other day from the president of a large first world country, I think we're sitting in it right now, who said, enough prayer, it's time for action. And it drove me nuts. I think there's a time for action, check. But I don't think there's a time to say enough prayer. And I'm paraphrasing this, you can tell me I'm wrong. But we don't know what prayer is doing. We couldn't possibly know. Even when we think we know because our prayers led to X, Y, and Z, we still don't know. We don't even know the generational impacts of the prayers that we're a part of our participation in the sacraments, of putting God before spouse and spouse before others, and being in that right alignment. So self-care in your hardest moments and in your best moments has to come back to an appreciation, a love, a respect, and a worship of Jesus Christ. That's self-care. Let's talk about the part where, in addition to prayer, not enough prayer, what else can we do? This is a family dinner that I would love to have. In fact, I didn't count, but I think they got 5 kids. Yeah, 6. Okay, this is me in 2 years. Isn't this what we want? To be in communication and connection with human beings? But instead, we're sitting here with iPads and iPhones and looking down. When in the world did it ever become that we have to be accessible to everything all the time? And there's no generation that is free from guilt. I think my mom is just as addicted to the iPhone as the people in my office, as my nieces. It is a really challenging place to be when a conversation takes a lull and we all look down. Our families, our coworkers, our future bosses, and the people that we connect with all deserve better. In fact, I would challenge you that when I'm trying to help somebody find a job or meeting with somebody and it's casual, you know, they're not sitting in my office in a suit, we're at a coffee shop. If they're looking at their phone and responding to something, okay, maybe it's like me. I've had a pregnant wife before that needed something immediately. I tell people before I sit down, hey, right now my wife is pregnant. If I see a call coming from my wife, I'll take that. But I'm actually not going to look at my phone outside of anything else. I will glance down when it's ringing, but I'm making a commitment to you to not look at my phone. And that makes a huge difference because guess what? I've never been at lunch with somebody that wasn't an interview. I've never been in a meeting with a group that wasn't a chance for the next career. And my proof of that is how many people work with us right now that don't ever remember interviewing because they just built a relationship and respect over time. Or how many people tell me that the time that I got together with them and 3 other people, I made a connection and told them what they had in common, and now they all work together, or they started something together, or they volunteered together. Every moment of your life is an interview because nothing's an interview. It's all about human connection. Does that make sense? So you see this guy looking at his, are you raising your hand because you do this?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, nothing in life is a coincidence. That God puts us together with people and in situations because we're meant to be in it.
We're meant to be in every situation that God puts us in. Amen. Thank you. Well, I don't think God wants you doing this in the picture, laying in bed looking at your phone. You can do it, but it's pretty bad for you. But you know what really happens? A lot of us send the emails at 10 o'clock at night that cause that person to open their phone and start looking, or Sunday morning because we happen to be working. And you know what really runs rampant in a lot of companies? That culturally, that's how you prove you work hard. Oh, you sent an email at 4:45? I'll send one at 4:30 a.m. tomorrow. Oh, you worked Friday at 10 o'clock at night or when you got home from the bar? Great, I could do that. I'll stay up at the office all night sending emails to all of you. I'll send out 40 emails to you too. Or a boss sends an email and says, don't worry about this until Monday. But it says, why did we mess up on such and such account? Who works for me that's not going to freak out on a Sunday reading that email? Like, oh no, you shouldn't read that. You just wait. That's not true. That's not how it works. But I'm asking you to create relationships in your life that recognize the other person's humanity and life circumstances and dignity by also just doing simple things like, I have a lot of kids, so I like to work from about 9 to 10 at night just to kind of finish up some stuff because I come home to be a part of dinner. But I won't send a single one of those emails. But everybody who works for me knows that when 8 a.m. hits, I've already auto-sent delayed delivery tomorrow. It's a pretty easy feature. And emails start coming in at 8 a.m. Well, great. They're sitting at their house, or they're driving to work, or they're having coffee. So whatever they're doing, I didn't interrupt in an obtrusive way. I was doing work during work hours no matter when I worked. And that's a cultural shift that we have to be able to go through. Does this really apply for you looking for a job? Yeah. I think it's kind of weird when I get the email 11:30 at night from somebody talking about the interview that we had together in the job, because it does feel a little hijacking. I know I don't need to look at my email, but there's also something about it that says, you could have put this in draft mode. You could have sent it as a delayed delivery. So just remember self-care. All right, we live in this world of video chatting, Zooming, and Microsoft Teams, and it ain't going away, folks. I don't care what vaccines or distancing or changes happen. My firm has been doing Zoom video on every single meeting for over 4 years. We were such early adopters. I even sat down with a nonprofit today and coached them through how to hold their next live event because we've held so many events and I gave them every trick about it. It is not going anywhere. Synchronous streaming and all sorts of stuff will still be here when people are back more in person. But boy, is it hard to interview somebody when they're so backlit that I see a terrible outline, or that their audio keeps going in and out and I can't figure out what they're talking about. It is not expensive to get a decent headset. I would love to talk to somebody wearing a headset with a mic, as my whole company has, rather than hoping to hear through the clutter. I'll even tell you, the people that use their iPhone earbuds sounds great until you realize it picks up the key typing. It picks up the lock in the door. Those things are so crazy powerful that they're still better than bad audio, but there's one step up that you can spend $25 on an Amazon headset and you're going to have better Zoom. Take a minute and look at yourself in the picture. Zoom with somebody and say, can you see my facial expressions? What's behind me? Like, just take the time. Don't do goofy backgrounds on a serious meeting. Do goofy backgrounds on goofy meetings. Quality matters so much because it shouldn't matter at all. Just like if you're watching a video for a nonprofit for this church, if the quality is bad, you feel weird watching it. You notice the quality. But if the quality's good, now you're talking about the ministries that are alive and thriving in this parish. Now you're talking about the people behind those ministries that are driving the change. And nobody's talking about the fact that, wow, what great sound quality they use. There wasn't any weird skips every time people were talking. Quality matters, and it matters to all of us, whether you're a job seeker or you're currently in your job. My last one, I don't mean for it to sound controversial, but I want you to stop networking and make it personal. If you're a job seeker, if you're helping people find jobs, if you're just living in the world, I can tell you that when I feel like I'm being networked with, I feel like I've now been commoditized. I either do or don't have a certain value output that the other person might gain from, and we're exchanging business cards to figure out what utility can you bring to my life, and maybe vice versa if I think that you're worth it, or we pay money to be in a networking group, which I'm not dogging networking groups. I'm trying to change your mentality. What happens when I go and find out what makes you tick? What things are you into? What is some interesting stories about how you got to be who you are? What's your faith journey been like? What's your family journey been like? Why do you think that you chose to go this route in your life? Was there anything that you loved when you were a teenager that you would love to get back into? And I don't have to have any of those things in common with you to fall in love with you, the person, you, the beautiful creation that God made unique in this world. But when you don't make it personal, when all I hear is your resume and what years and job titles you've had, and you refuse to tell me that you love playing violin, or that you still build Legos, or that you have an amazing collection of something, because you don't know if it's something that's going to resonate with me, I'm missing out on you. You are a unique, wonderful, amazing person. And the more I know you, which you can accomplish in 20 minutes, you can get to know somebody really well if you actually care about what they're saying, if you seek to understand them, if you seek to hear and engage on whatever they're talking about. The more you do that, the more responsibility and impact and connection you can have for them, for yourself. And what blows me away is the less I've ever looked into my own needs in a relationship, the more that relationship has paid off for my business, for my family, for my personal growth. But every time that I'm being honest and I walked into a relationship or a room like this or a big conference and it was about me, I left feeling let down. It's not how it's supposed to work. We're supposed to make it personal. So I want to make one more thing personal for you. My company's doing really well. It's cool. I get to speak. I just joined the Catholic Foundation. That's an incredible organization. Like, I have all these really neat things going on in my life. But if they kicked me out of every group and they took it all away, I would still be the man that God created me to be. I am not defined by my job. I'm not defined by my title. I'm not defined by any of the fun stories I told you before. They all just happen to be details. For me, it's my faith in Jesus Christ, my love of the Catholic Church, that I get to do that in partnership with my beautiful wife every day, that we both wake up, and that we get to keep raising as many kids as God will give us. And I want to show you my number 4 kid, okay? So I have 3 kids at this time. This is almost 2 years ago, and we go through a 9-month perfect pregnancy. We never find out the gender of our kid. And on June 24th of 2019, my wife goes in for a scheduled C-section again, full term, everything's good. A boy, it's a boy. So it's our second boy. We're now even the boy-girl ratio. We knew the name, but we hadn't told anybody. So Ambrose Charles Scheffelbein's born. They hold him up. My wife's crying. Ambrose is here. And then he doesn't make all the noises he's supposed to make. And then they bring in more nurses. And my wife's saying, is everything okay? And I said, yeah, everything's fine over here, but it's not. He looks a weird color. So they say, Dad, come with us. We're going to the NICU. And I'm like, oh, man. My wife never got to hold this baby or see this baby. And I knew what that was like. I knew it was going to be hours before she got to see him. And so we went down the hall, and they put a CPAP on him, and that didn't work, and a nose cannula didn't work. About 45 minutes later, they intubate him. Then they put him on a different ventilator. Then about an hour and a half, 2 hours into this, and I've been crying because I want my wife to hold this baby. I've been crying knowing he's fine in my brain. All I wanted was for Amanda to hold him. I had to call my mother-in-law and say, go hang out with Amanda in the recovery room. Oh yeah, tell everybody it's a boy. His name's Ambrose, gotta go. So I'm separated from the whole family. Amanda's all alone with her mom. And then They're like, hey, we're putting him in this other part of the NICU. It's got some better equipment. And I didn't realize that was code for he's really sick and we're going to put him in the part where there's somebody watching him at all times and there's machines all around him. So his lungs still don't open, and they are doing all these scans on him, and they end up putting him on something called an oscillator. It puffs 6 puffs of air every second into his body, trying to get his lungs to open. But in order to do that, they have to sedate him, paralyze him, put him on fentanyl, dopamine, and they end up tearing his lungs open because they're shoving so much air into his body, so now they have to put a tube in the side of Ambrose's body. So this is Ambrose. By the way, I don't tell everybody this, but he actually has something in that hand, this hand, both feet, and in his side. So he has the 5 bones of Jesus Christ, and he's laying there, completely lifeless, except that they're pumping so much air in him, he's shaking. And it's like that until about midnight when I go and see my wife, and I'm trying to tell her, like, we have a beautiful boy, he looks perfect. And then the doctor shows up in that room. He's walked 10 minutes to catch up to me. Tells me to get a wheelchair. It's time for us to go say goodbye to Ambrose. And Amanda had never spent any real time with him, so put her in a wheelchair, and we said we're going to go down there and they're going to hand Ambrose to my wife so she can be with him for his last breaths. And I'm going to baptize him when I get there. When we get there and the machines are cranked up, it's loud. There's people standing all around his bed. They all clear out for us. And we sit there and pray and cry and love this little boy and pray with him and hold the little bits of his finger that we can actually get our hands on. 2 hours later, he's still alive and they haven't unhooked anything. So they tell my wife to go to sleep. I call my friend who's a priest in the diocese. I said, you have to change your whole schedule. He comes up at 8 a.m. We baptize Ambrose. He's 24 hours old, still in the same condition. And the doctor says, I pray that you're here when I get back from vacation in 10 days. There's nothing that we can do medically. Your son's either going to change or he's going to outgrow. Something's going to change or he's going to outgrow these machines, or the machines are just going to rip him up. You have one option, which is a miracle. So I waited until noon. He's 32 hours old to send out the, hey everybody, we had a baby. His name's Ambrose. Here's his height and weight. Here's the more important part. Every person of faith, we need your prayers. And here's what we are experiencing. That went out 2 minutes before noon. And they did his next check, his next x-rays at 3 p.m. And then the doctor who was trying to get out of town started crying. And Amanda was down there in her wheelchair. And she started crying and said, I'm not trying to give you false hope, but your son's lungs opened up. I can't explain it. And I was praying all night to come up with an answer. And I don't know what it was, but your son's lungs opened up. And I'm going to tell you that medicine caused my son to not die. But it's prayer that caused my son to live. And that's why it's time to keep praying. And I want to show you what happened. 4 days later, he came out of sedation. 8 days later, we held him. 16 days into this ordeal, he comes home. On day 17, his 3 older siblings got to meet him for the first time. I'm telling you to make it personal, and I'm making it personal tonight, because the better you know the people around you, the better you can be an advocate for them, both in prayer, in making the right connections, in encouragement, and in connecting with one another for the opportunities that we have. So this video is called Heaven on Earth, and I hope you'll enjoy it. I'll narrate it for you. Pax is at that point, almost 2-year-old that kisses him 3 times in a row before going in for the nestle up hug. There it is. He puts his head down. This is Amelia that's closest, kissing his forehead, and then the curly blonde, that one, is Lorelei. This is only a 32-second video, but there's 17 kisses. He averages a kiss every other second. And it's been this way ever since, that my family is a family who loves one another and cherishes every second of our lives. After Ambrose grew and has become one heck of an amazing, almost 2-year-old, we were blessed to have our 5th Benedict just in January. So I'm sharing all this with you because this part where we go and make a Christian world and evangelize the way we're supposed to and set hearts on fire, this world where we're called to be the best version of ourselves, to love God above all people and to love each other as we would love ourselves, it starts by being personal and by knowing who you are and what you stand for and why you care about the things you care about. So my encouragement to you tonight is, there's great people in here. There's a reason why we're all here tonight. I think you nailed that. There's a reason why you've been through anything you've been through during COVID, before COVID. Your story, when it's shared, can do so much for other people. And I would encourage you, both in this room tonight, as we get a chance to maybe mingle at the end, And after you leave here tonight, when you go and talk to friends or loved ones or go about your day tomorrow, find something from this to share. Find something from this to challenge somebody else about. Find something from this to hold yourself accountable to proclaim that you're no longer going to do. It could be the self-loathing voice that tells you you're not good enough for something, or that talks about somebody else in your head. Say those things out loud to Jesus, and they're going to sound ridiculous. I'm not good enough to do X. If you say that out loud to Jesus, you'll hear how preposterous it is that we allow those things to creep into our life. So, I ask you tonight to pray for me, and I'm going to pray for you as I've already been doing. I'll open up to a little Q&A, and then I know we get a chance to meet some of you that are job seekers. So any Q&A, my email's up there if you wanted to. Yes. I'll show you those pictures. I love these pictures. It's so funny. I was like, how come nobody thinks this is crazy? My whole slideshow was just pictures, so I was really sad when none of it was working. Yeah, there's awards popping up. There's all sorts of great stuff. All right. Well, let me show you what the show looks like first. Hold on. Oops, I'm going down. Hold on. New computer. Okay, this is a really good view from the balcony of the show itself. And if you look at this character right here, this isn't when I was in the show, but I can tell by these shorts that are made for a 10-year-old that this is my character dancing on stage with this character. And you see these little stages right here, they're actually like disco cubes. They're showing this. When I was a patron at the show, that's when I got pulled up on by one of the cast members during the pre-show. Just kind of like this cast member up on other cast members' shoulders here. It is like being in Studio 54, but everything is telling the story of Midsummer Night's Dream. And it actually won a lot of awards, and the woman who produced it has won a bunch of Tony Awards. She's like super Broadway famous, and she used to give me all my notes about how to dance. So then, when I finally showed y'all this page, that's me. My parents came to the show, by the way. And I don't know what they were expecting, but when it was done, my mom gave me this like compliment that was an apology. It was, I'm sorry I didn't know this was a real show. That was amazing. I'm so sorry. And I realized she had just spent 2 months judging me for everything I had ever done. All right, we don't need to stare at this. Any other questions besides the pictures? Cool. Well, I'm going to be around nice and masked and ready to talk, and I know Tracy has some more stuff for y'all. But I do just want to thank, we got a question in the back. Sorry, go ahead.
How can we return the favor to you? How can we help you?
How can you help me? That's a great question. One is very serious about this. Pray for me. I think that is a very important part of, we happen to be in one of the most amazing dioceses in America. There is something very special happening in this diocese, and I think that we are being called as a diocese and as individuals to continue to own the responsibility that the world, especially the world in the U.S., is looking to us to figure out what to do. And somehow or another, I've stumbled my way into getting a chance to speak. It's not somehow. The Holy Spirit answered a prayer. Right now I'm on Catholic radio every month. I'm getting a chance to do talks like this really often. So just pray for me and my discernment that I can continue to be a voice for the church and for the truth of Jesus Christ. Thank you for that. And be my friend. I also like friends. Cool. Thanks, Tracy.
Just a small token of our appreciation. This is a book from about how the diocese came to be.
Oh, awesome.
And then a little part with something in it.
Thank
So,
you.
yes, you're welcome.
This is awesome. I'm just bragging about the time.
I know.
Get my
So,
note.
yeah,
Thank
very
you.
good. So, we don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I do want to give a chance to anyone who would like to introduce themselves. Would like to, everyone, I challenge you all to speak to someone else that you haven't met before tonight, before it's over, which is, not too long. But if you can just, if you are interested in, are seeking a job or have open positions that you would like to let others know about, feel free to raise your hand and I'll come around with a microphone and speak for 1 to 2 minutes max. And then when we let everyone go, just you can mingle. I had some beverages, but the refrigerator is locked, so I have to figure that out. I'm a new employee, so I'm gonna figure that out sometime. Okay, so if you would like to introduce yourself and say who you are and what you're looking for, there are a number of other people in the room who all know a lot of other people and could maybe help you out. So don't be shy. Anyone? Okay. You don't have to. Okay. I do see, here, I'll put my mask on, just to be extra safe. Stop. Please, take your mask off when you're speaking.